Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Friday night live stream for studentloanjustice.org. My name is Alan Collins. We are the oldest, largest, and in many ways only true grassroots group fighting only and absolutely for student loan justice. That means two things. The first thing is returning bankruptcy protections to all student loans. Nobody wants to file for bankruptcy. It's a terrible thing to have to do. We have got to have the threat of bankruptcy back on our side in order for the second thing that we're fighting for to happen meaningfully. Loan cancellation. We are also fighting to compel the president to cancel all federally owned loans, 100% by executive order. And we're closer than you might think. In fact, we are closer today than we have ever been, ever, ladies and gentlemen. Very glad to say. So tonight, I want to talk about answering the tough questions. I hopefully don't need to tell you that there are a lot of haters out there. They like to wag their finger and say, no, don't cancel student loans, or in years past, not so much now, but in years past, no, don't return bankruptcy protections to student loans. Let those kids pay through the nose. When I was a kid, I did this. When I was a kid, I did that. La, 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 da, da, da. And there's a million little corollary snipey comments that or questions that come along with that. So if you're watching us on Twitter or Facebook, welcome. If you're watching us on any of our other platforms, YouTube, Instagram, etc., I can't see your questions. But if on those first two platforms, if you have a question or comment, I would love to hear it. In fact, I would love it if people would throw out some of the tough questions that they hear as they go forward fighting with us for student loan justice. First, let me make a couple of announcements. There's a lot going on right now, folks. As I said, in the 17-year history of our organization, we've never been in a better spot. So yesterday, the Washington Post reported that a bunch of Democratic, I think, senators wrote a letter to Miguel Cardona, Secretary of Education, and also the head of the Department of Justice, whose name escapes me. What's his name? You know the guy. Obama put him up as a Supreme Court nominee, but the Republicans blocked him. Anyways, he is now head of the Department of Justice. Not important. What's important is that the letter underscored two things. The need for the Department of Education to stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. Merrick Garland, that's the guy. Attorney General Merrick Garland. Stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. This is something the Department of Education and its contractors like ECMC have been doing for years. The second thing the letter alluded to is our forthcoming legislation, S-2598, which will return, as a matter of federal code, bankruptcy protections to federal student loans. This bill is extremely important, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to say it one more time. We will not see meaningful student loan cancellation unless and until we get the threat of bankruptcy returned to us. Very important. Joe Biden could tomorrow hold a press conference and say, I'm going to cancel up to $50,000 in student loans. And as long as the threat, the leverage of bankruptcy remains gone from us, that up to $50,000 will come to mean almost nothing for almost everyone. That's how the Department of Education rolls. They hate canceling loans. They hate us, the borrowers. They can't stand us. They operate like a bank, and they jettisoned all pretense of public spirit, public mission many years, even decades ago. So we can't let ourselves be fooled again, ladies and gentlemen. With the threat of bankruptcy back on our side, the game is over. The jig is up. Biden's going to have to cancel student loans very meaningfully. So this letter that these senators sent to Cardona and Attorney General Merrick Garland is a very good sign. It's a very good sign. And I should say, I hate to pat ourselves on the back too much, but the people who've been in this group for any length of time realize that it was us that got the ball rolling on stopping opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. We've been We've been pitching this idea to the Durbin Judiciary Chairman Dick Durbin staff since I think 2017. We started pushing Elizabeth Warren's campaign, also Bernie Sanders' campaign, also Joe Biden's campaign, to make a campaign pledge to stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. And we were thrilled that Elizabeth Warren adopted this pledge. She wrote it into her agenda. Biden then adopted her bankruptcy agenda, which included this pledge. But yeah, no, we went around and around with Elizabeth Warren's people, with Joe Biden's campaign manager, Greg Murphy. Greg Murphy. And they acknowledged that it was an idea that they would take seriously, and thank you very much. We've also been bird dogging people like James Cavall in a very direct way for well over a year on this. So we're thrilled that finally appears to be bearing some fruit. Now, we don't know what the department is going to do. We haven't seen it. They haven't said anything publicly yet, but it's looking quite good. And this really matters. I mean, it's not a perfect solution because it's not our bill, which codifies the return of bankruptcy protections to federal student loans, but it is a very viable workaround. So this letter that was sent yesterday is a very nice harbinger, I think, of things to come very soon, like maybe even this week, quite frankly, or this next week. So I'm thrilled. Our hard work is finally starting to pay off. So yeah, there's that. And as I said, if you have any questions or comments and you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, throw them out. And if I can see them, I will gladly respond to them. So this letter was a good thing. Our opposition continues to fight very hard. Right now, the question of the day is whether President Biden will extend the repayment pause or whether we will indeed be compelled back into repayment on May 1st. So that's the question of the hour. As of a month ago, I said it was probably a 60-40 chance that they were going to extend the repayment pause. But then a bunch of private banks, including SoFi, College Avenue Financing, aka Albert Lord, and others have been pushing very, very, very hard to turn, and legislators in North Carolina, Indiana, other places, have been fighting very hard to compel Biden to turn the loans back on. So we're good whichever way it goes. I mean, I see pluses and minuses with both. I would imagine that most of our members really want that repayment pause extended. And so that I totally feel you on that. Quite frankly, in my humble opinion, ladies and gentlemen, this lending system is dead. The federal student loan system in this country is dead. It may still be walking around, but it is a dead man walking. And in my humble opinion, it is both unwise and I would say even unpatriotic to ever pay another dime on your federal student loans. This is a big government lending beast. It is dangerous at this point, and it does no one any good to feed this beast. So, and I'd be very happy to hear your comments on that. So tonight, let me look at some of the comments here. Hey, Leslie Fishman, how are you? She says, from your mouth to God's ears. I think is the last thing that I said. Doug Grostefan says, you got the ball rolling, Ellen. Yes, we did. I like to take some credit for that. We wouldn't even have a bankruptcy bill to fight for right now, but for our group and the people in our group. I'm not kidding. I don't think that we would be talking about student loan cancellation by executive order right now. Before we started our petition, none of the politicians were talking about canceling by executive order. It was only when our petition had been going for 6 months and we were up to 500,000 signatures that Senator Warren and Schumer embraced the concept. And we're glad that they did. There's a very important distinction between canceling loans by executive order and canceling loans through Congress. By executive order, it can be done without needing one dime of money from the Treasury and without adding even 1 penny to the national debt. The taxpayers paid for these loans many years ago, and they didn't pay $1.6 trillion. They paid a small fraction of that, and the profit that taxpayers made since 2010 when they federalized the lending program, it could well be that the government is essentially breaking even on this lending program right now. They might be in the red a little bit when all of the loans are canceled, but it's not even enough to even shout about. It's probably a couple $100 billion, which is a lot of money by most other metrics, but not by the student, not in the student loan universe when we're talking about 1.8 trillion total, both federal and private student loans outstanding. So we're getting close, guys. And for the third time, let me just say, bankruptcy lies at the core of all of this. Nobody wants to file for bankruptcy. It's a terrible thing to have to do. I get that. But at the same time, the founding fathers knew that bankruptcy was so important. They called for uniform bankruptcy laws in the Constitution and had the power to raise an army, coin currency, and declare war. So the founding fathers knew something, and this student loan catastrophe is precisely the sort of thing they wanted it to avoid. With the threat of bankruptcy returned, everything gets better. Most people probably shouldn't even have to file. Just the threat of bankruptcy alone is enough to level the playing field and force the lending side to behave with at least a modicum of good faith. And that's what's been missing from this equation for decades now. Hey, Rosanna Munoz, how are you? Munoz. She says, executive order will benefit everyone. All these other programs are just smoke and mirrors. Yes, you're exactly right, Rosanna. We've seen a million loan cancellation gimmicks come and go in the past. We've seen Congress pass any number of loan cancellation programs. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, it's ridiculous. Number one, Congress has to pay for loan cancellation. So if Congress wants to cancel $1 trillion in student loan debt, they have to raise $1 trillion in taxes. That's never going to happen. Not ever. Not ever, 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 ever will that happen. So yeah, executive order is exactly the right way to go, both for loan cancellation. And we do need Congress, however, for the bankruptcy thing. I mean, the executive order to make the Department of Education stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy proceedings, that's a nice interim solution, but we do need Congress to gut that one line of code, 11 U.S. Code 523, parentheses A, parentheses 8, and return bankruptcy protections to student loans. By the way, again, that bill number is S2598. There's also a similar bill for private student loans, which is HR 4907. Private loans are going to be tough, ladies and gentlemen. If you have private loans, you really need to be pushing HR 4907. So Doug Grostefan asks, how close are we to getting the bankruptcy laws returned? Doug, we're very close. I was actually hoping to have some very good news on that front today. And I do have some good news in that article that was published yesterday. But we don't have, we hopefully will have something very new and good and awesome to point to this coming week. So we're close. We're very close, Doug. Rosanna says, Congress has too many vested interests. Yeah, don't get me. How much time do we have, Rosanna? Yeah, I'm going to let that one go because it's true. And if I started talking about that, I'd probably be talking for hours. So folks, tonight, answering the tough questions. There are haters out there who oppose us. Most of them either don't have student loans, or some of them recently repay, or in years or decades past, have repaid their student loans, and some of them just hate college students or something. It's hard to put them all in one basket, although it would be a pretty deplorable basket, I would say, to coin Hillary Clinton, to reuse a Hillary Clinton coin phrase. And by the way, so you know, we're a nonpartisan group, guys. We pretty much can't stand either party. If you're Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or communists, you're very welcome in this group. So having said that, the Republicans typically have been against us. And I have to be honest and say that typically most of the haters, the, hey, pay your loans, those finger wagger people, they tend to consider themselves conservative. So that's just kind of a fact, which is fine. There's a lot of conservatives who are on our side, conservative Republicans and others who are on our side, both on bankruptcy and on student loan cancellation. They're not very loud about it, though. It would seem they certainly need to step up and be a little louder. And they are certainly on the bankruptcy front. We're getting a lot of support from Republicans now. That S-2598 bill that I told you of, the most important bankruptcy bill in the history of our 17-year-old organization, has 2 Republican co-sponsors on it: Senator Josh Hawley out of Missouri and Senator John Cornyn out of Texas. So that is really something. So I'm going to maybe go through some of the worst questions the toughest questions that we get. And they tend to be things like, I repaid my loans. Why should I have to pay for your loans too? Right? We hear that a lot. And the answer is very simple. Number one, I like to say, well, congratulations for being able to repay your loans in years or decades past. And usually it's decades past. Usually it's like, yeah, I repaid a $2,500 loan and I paid $3,000 back in 1979. But whatever the case may be, congratulations. Be glad that you were able to repay your loans in years or decades past. Today, in 2022, however, 80% of all borrowers were never going to be able to repay their student loans. And that was true before the pandemic. 80%. There are 45 million federal student loan borrowers in the country. 36 million of them were never going to be able to repay their loans even before the pandemic. And this problem has grown to the point where the numbers are outrageous. The state of Texas, for example, Texans owe $141 billion in student loan debt. Georgians, people in Georgia, owe $82 billion in student loan debt. What would happen if we ripped $141 billion out from the people of Texas and sent that money mostly to Washington, D.C.? It would probably turn the state of Texas into some kind of a second or even third world state or something. It would be terrible. And the fact that others were able to repay their loans successfully in years past has nothing to do with that reality today. They should be glad to be done. And they shouldn't be wishing the same horribles, in fact, far worse, upon present and even future generations. Shame on them for doing that. Should we have never freed the slaves because it wasn't fair to the older slaves back in the 1860s who had spent their entire lives in bondage? Of course we should have freed the slaves. Should we not have, I don't know, you name it. I mean, should we not have introduced the polio vaccine because it would be unfair to people who had perished from polio back in the 1920s, aughts, and teens and prior? Of course we should have administered the polio vaccine. That's stupid. It's not an argument. So just remember that. Say congratulations, but this isn't about you. This is no longer your problem. The problem right now today is what I just said. The lending system is failed, and it's a national threat. And no matter what the finger waggers can do or say or think or feel or emote, that will not change the fact that this current lending program is catastrophically failed with a capital F. The loans will be canceled. The loans will not be paid. That is just math. It is not going to happen. Another interesting tidbit, before the pandemic, 64.3%, that's nearly 2/3 of all federal student loan borrowers, were not paying on their student loans. I kid you not. It's true. Now, even if you take out the people who were in school, and there was a fair amount, 7 or 8 million people, we're still left with 57% of all federal student loan borrowers were not paying on their loans before the pandemic. So the lending system is toast. It's done. Other people, another often used criticism or question I hear are, why should my tax dollars be used to pay for your college? Didn't you read the loan note? Didn't you read the fine print? As a national reporter asked me the other day, were student loan borrowers under duress when they signed those loan documents? And number one, the taxpayer will be fine. And I think I mentioned earlier, the taxpayer didn't pay $1.6 trillion for those loans. The taxpayers paid a small fraction of that. The vast majority of that number is interest and penalties and fees and capitalized interest and more penalties and fees and nonsense over and above original lent principal. Not only that, the Department of Education has been booking upwards of $50 billion a year in profit on this lending program since 2010. Now, nobody knows the answer to this question, but it may very well be that when the loans are canceled completely, all federally owned student loans, the taxpayer may be breaking about even. So the taxpayer has made a king's ransom on this unconstitutional lending scam for many years running. Even before Obama federalized it, the Department of Education was eking out a not insignificant profit, not loss, on defaulted student loans. And that is still true today. So there is literally no way for the taxpayer, at least on paper, to lose money on this. And there is you can't say that about PPP loans, right? These PPP loans, all added in the national debt, required money to be drawn from the Treasury. We can cancel these student loans and no money would even change hands. Not one nickel from the Treasury, not one dime is added to the national debt. So that's what I say to that. And again, if you want to throw some tough questions out at me, guys, this is like batting practice for me. I love these questions. I'm very happy to knock them down. So yeah. Other things they say. A lot of people say, what do they say? Well, let's get back to the contract. You knew what you signed up for. You knew what you were getting. No, that's not true. Never, ever, ever are students and their families told before signing for these loans that, unlike every other loan in this country, there are no statutes of limitations for these loans. There are essentially no bankruptcy rights for these loans. There are no truth in lending laws for these federal loans. There are limited fair debt collection practice laws coverage for federal student loans. Even state usury laws don't apply to student loans. You know, that's essentially like selling somebody a car that doesn't have brakes. And, you know, imagine that. Imagine you buy a new car online, you go pick it up at the dealership, you drive it down the street, you realize you have no brakes, and you wind up in a ditch down the road. And you go back to the dealership and you go, hey, man, there's no brakes on this car. What's going on? And they said, well, hey, buddy, you should have read the manual because this particular model doesn't come with brakes. Like, who's the bad guy there, right? Students and their families are, in fact, never told that bankruptcy protections are, for all intents and purposes, gone from these loans. In fact, if you look at loan counseling, and the college do the entrance loan counseling, you'll see language that says something like this: you can discharge your loans in bankruptcy if you can prove undue hardship. That sounds pretty reasonable, right? I mean, to an 18-year-old kid who does not know a damn thing, and even their parents, probably, who've never filed for bankruptcy, that sounds pretty reasonable. Okay, so undue hardship. Okay, fine. They don't tell you that it is essentially impossible for all intents to prove undue hardship. You know, in a typical year of 169,000 people who file for bankruptcy and have student loans, fewer than 20 get even partial discharges on their student loans. So what's that? Those are lottery-like odds. The students and their parents are never told that. So were they under duress? Well, I don't know. Frankly, I'd say they're basically on some sort of autopilot. But the omissions about this viciously predatory, disgustingly terrible lending scam is never made known to the students or their parents prior to signing out for the loans. They don't find out that until years or decades later. Another criticism that I hear a lot is, you kids, when I was a kid, you kids. We are not kids. Don't forget that. In fact, this is more a senior issue than a young person's issue. Sounds crazy, right? Not crazy. It's true. People over the age of 35 outnumber people under the age of 35 with student loan debt, federal student loan debt. And they owe 150% more. So as people are getting older, the loan balances are going up, not down. Like most loans, you start out with this balance and over time you niggle it down to nothing, right? That's how a normal, healthy loan works. Well, for federal student loans, no. The opposite is happening. The older people get, the higher the loan balance goes on average. So this is just a broken lending program. And by the way, there are more people over the age of 50 than under the age of 25 with student loan debt. And they owe not 150% more, they owe 300% more. So I kid you not, these are not kids. This is more an older person's problem than a younger person's problem. The numbers don't lie. Well, hopefully they don't lie. All of my claims that I've made tonight have come directly from the Department of Education, by the way. It's almost the only data that we use. On rare occasion, we might look at Federal Reserve data, but that's very, very dicey crap. We like to stick only with Department of Education data as much as we possibly can. Very rare occasions, we'll look at like Gallup or Pew polling data. Like we did a report just the other day about the political affiliation of student loan borrowers. Here's another very interesting fact. Well, if Pew and Gallup research are to be believed, in 2014, people who had gone to college, both graduates, non-graduates, undergraduate, and graduate, politically, they were about a 50-50 split between Democrats and Republicans and independents together. So Republicans and independents together were about half of all the people who had been to college, aka student loan borrowers. Assuming that's a direct correlation. The country has swung decidedly to the right since 2014. So today, most student loan borrowers probably identify politically as either Republicans or independents more than Democrats. It's true. This is not a liberal, snowflake, elitist, coastal issue. No. This is a problem for a very vast demographic of the American public. So don't forget that. It's very important. I'm going to look for some more comments here. Hopefully I can see them. Demographic of the American public. So don't forget. Denise Peralt, how are you? Should I say Perot or Peralt? I'm going to say Perot. I think that sounds better. Denise says, I tweeted them a few weeks ago and asked them to investigate, explain some things going on with my loan, misappropriation of funds by the college being charged 100 late fee. Yeah, Denise, I'm going to leave that one alone. There are a universe of misadministrative tricks that the colleges and the lenders and the servicers and the collection companies and the guarantors and even the Department of Education play. It is a nightmare. It is a Byzantine mess. And many people probably have strong legal cases, but Denise, I'm not going there. It is a mess. The bad guys kind of don't have to break the law, although they do often, because the law itself is what needs to be changed. And so we rise above all the nickel and dimey problems that people encounter. And there are a million of them. But you're not going to get any sort of legal recourse. We've seen a million class action lawsuits come and go over the years. And even the rare successful class action lawsuits, they result in almost nothing for the borrowers, and all the people who get paid are typically lawyers and departments of the Attorney General in states. And so, yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be angry about how badly they have misadministered the student loan program up and down the line. Rosano says, you are right. I am 64, working as a teacher for 30 plus years. You know, Rosanna, it's stories like yours that just make my blood boil. If you're 65 years or older and you have any outstanding balance on a federal student loan, it should be canceled. You should be done. You should be done. But exactly the opposite is happening. They are now garnishing Social Security income for seniors. It's the most disgusting lending regime I've ever come across in my 5+ decades on this planet, let me just say. And as I said before, in my humble opinion, no one should even be paying good money, throwing good money after bad into this lending program. You know, we have people like one woman, she originally borrowed $26,000. She has repaid, I think, $93,000 on this $26,000 loan. She still owes $132,000, and she's not unique, not by any stretch. You know, it's the older people who are being hurt the worst by this lending program, which is not to say that the younger kids today aren't going to get absolutely wrecked. They are, make no mistake. But the people who have been harmed worse by these loans walking around today are older people. They're not younger people. They haven't felt the true viciousness, the pointy end of this stick, anything like people in their 50s, 60s, and beyond have felt. Another well-worn criticism is that, no, don't cancel student loans. Student loan cancellation will benefit the wealthy. And that is the biggest lie going around right now. There's a guy named Adam Looney, who's a ringer from the Treasury Department, who trots over to the Brookings Institution every once in a while and puts out propaganda like that. So Adam Looney, for example, is pointing to the fact that top 20% earners, so people who earn over $100,000 a year, own about 30% of federal student loan debt. Now, that on its face may sound like something, but you know what that also means? That also means that the bottom 80% of earners own 70% of student loan debt. So by Adam's own numbers, and quite frankly, I'm not sure I believe him, but even if they are true, by Adam's own numbers, Adam Mooney, formerly of the Treasury Department, currently of the Brookings Institute, total scumbag swamp creature, even by his own numbers, the large majority of student loan debt is owned by the bottom 80% of earners. You compare that to PPP loans. Let's do that. PPP loans, the top 20% earners, aka $100,000 or more, took out 75% of that PPP loan money. So if and those PPP loans all added to the national debt, all required money to be drawn from the Treasury. So if Adam Mooney has a problem with canceling federal student loans because 20% because people making over $100,000 a year own 30% of the debt, well, then he should be shouting from the rooftops about PPP loans. Now, here's another key point. As I said just a minute ago, older people are being hurt the worst. The average student loan balance for people over 50 is 300% higher than the average student loan balance for people under the age of 25. 300%. Older people tend to earn more. So like that example that I gave about 7 minutes ago, this person borrowed $26,000 over the decades, has repaid $93,000, currently owes like $132 or something thousand. That person finally is at a stage in her life, I think she's in her either late 50s, early 60s, where she actually makes over $100,000 now. It's taken her decades to get to the point where she is. But that's the kind of high-earning, wealthy borrower who is stuck with student loans into their 50s and 60s. These people are not wealthy. They are not, paying their student loans is not like a luxury expense for them. No. These people have been raked over the fucking coals, and they deserve to be done with this debt. Not have to plow their entire retirement into these loans to make them go away. That is ridiculous. It's nonsensical. Shame, big shame on people like Adam Mooney for trotting this nonsense out. And remember also, 100% of all federal student loan borrowers are determined to be financially needy. That's the whole thing about FAFSA. When you fill out the FAFSA, they are trying to determine how financially needy you are. And if they find that you are not financially needy, you will not, most of the time, qualify for student loans. Now, for Parent Plus loans, it's a little bit different. So, okay, whatever. But for the vast majority of situations, people who get federal student loans are determined to be financially needy. And I think that's actually even true for Parent Plus loans, right? Because if you make too much, then you don't even need a Parent Plus loan. You just have to pay out of pocket. So there's also that, to say that student loan cancellation is regressive, that it will benefit the wealthy, that is a bald-faced lie. Both on the face of it because of that first thing I said, and also because all the stuff that I just said after that first thing that I said. So rewind this tape if you have any questions. I think I was clear, but maybe you have to rewind it because I know it's a mouthful. Rosana Munoz says, I've applied for every student loan forgiveness and always at some requirement that I do not meet, like being born on Mars. Right. Rosana, you're not alone. Since the 1990s, millions of people have tried for any number of student loan cancellation programs, federal. ICR, IBR, Public Service Loan Forgiveness, Pay As You Earn, Revised Pay As You Earn. Far less than 1% of all the people trying for those student loan forgiveness programs have made it through. Like for the income contingent repayment, ICR, that started back in the 90s. We now have good data on that. Of several million people who tried for that, 32 people actually made it through. So these forgiveness programs are cruel jokes. They are anchors disguised as life vests, and they are not to be taken seriously. And if the people in Washington, D.C., if they have their way, they will do another fake loan cancellation gimmick, and they will keep bankruptcy rights gone from the loans. That is exactly what we cannot afford, guys. We cannot let ourselves be tricked again. And this group right here, believe it or not, we are kind of the tip of the spear in this battle, both on the bankruptcy front and also on the student loan cancellation front. I kid you not. But just remember that first thing I said. If you want, whatever your situation may be, maybe you want total loan cancellation, maybe you want some break, some negotiated settlement, some workout in the middle. Maybe you actually need to file for bankruptcy on your loans. Whatever your situation may be, we all need to be fighting hard for the return of bankruptcy protections to student loans. Unpleasant though it may be, and I know it is. Nobody wants to file for bankruptcy. Hey, Doug Grustafin says, please tell us one more time that we've mostly paid off our principal, but it's capitalized interest, compounded interest, killing over 50. Right, Doug. And I gave you that experience. I gave you that anecdote, and I can give you several others. But the point is, and we don't know exactly what the number is, but of the outstanding $1.6 trillion in federal student loan debt, a small fraction of that is actual unpaid principal. The large majority of that portfolio is interest and penalties and fees and compounded interest, etc. My best guess, and nobody knows, but my best guess, and I live and breathe Department of Education data, is that probably 200 billion, maybe a little bit, tiny bit more, is actual unpaid principal. And also, don't forget, the Department of Education has been booking $50+ billion in profit on this lending system for the past 12 years, since Obama federalized it back in 2010. So the taxpayers are going to be fine when they cancel these loans. But again, guys, we're not going to see meaningful cancellation or any nice workout that you may want to see, a break on interest, etc. We're not going to see any of that stuff until we get the threat of bankruptcy back. As unpleasant as I know it is to fight for bankruptcy, we've all got to be fighting very hard for S-2598 and for this executive action that is now forthcoming from the White House and the Department of Education. So, hey, Kelly Kessler, how are you? Forgiveness programs are a creative way to trap borrowers forever. You're exactly right, Kelly. There's even some constitutional scholars out there who are starting to make the argument that these student loan repayment programs like IBR, like pay, repay, etc., are actually tantamount to bonds of indenture. We abolished slavery and indentured servitude in this country in the 13th Amendment in like 1870 or something, 60s, shortly after 1865, maybe 1865. Yeah, we abolished slavery in this country. We abolished indentured servitude. Read Amendment 13 for yourself. And these student loan repayment programs are starting to walk and talk and chirp and quack a lot like that slavery slash indentured servant duck, if I may take such liberal license with that. So, I see a bunch of comments here that I don't think that we're going to be able to get through here tonight. Ton from Denise. Hope you remember what I said, Denise. Class action lawsuits sound good, but they almost never work out. And when they do work out, they almost always work out for the lawyers. They don't work out. And, as I said, the bad guys kind of don't need to break the law to do what they do because they've already bought the law. Taking bankruptcy protections away was the big thing that they got done. Taking statutes of limitations away also was a very big thing. And if we had more time and effort and people and, resources, we'd be fighting for the return of statutes of limitations as well. So I hope you all are pleased. More than anything, I hope you all are enthused and ready to help us, because nothing that we've gotten done these 17 years, not one feather of it happened because people sat around and waited and watched and worried and ate popcorn and cheerlead and did nothing. Every inch of ground that we've gained has been because human people on this group have been putting forth the effort necessary to get the ball rolling. We've got a big fight on our hands, folks. And those finger waggers, those whatever they want to call themselves, people who hate students or hate student loan borrowers, whatever, those people are out there and they're not going away. We need you here with us fighting. We've gotten 95% of the way. I can see the finish line now. But this last few miles of the marathon is make or break for us. Like, I kid you not, our bill is being marked up like right now, this past week, and it may even be done by now, I'm not sure, but our bill is at a critical phase, and how hard we fight right now could spell the difference between something and nothing. We don't want nothing. The lending system's failed. Don't get me wrong. These loans are going away one way or the other. But whether it goes one way or the other is a very important thing for us. This could have a great outcome. We get bankruptcy returned, and ultimately the president cancels student loans very broadly, meaningfully, maybe even totally. That's the good outcome. Stimulates the economy. People are happy, etc. There's also a very bad outcome where the lending swamp creatures double down on their sociopathy, double down on their sadisticness, on their sadism, and we really have a war in this country between the collection regime and the people. People will probably die. I mean, it will be civilly, socially unrestful. It could be a very terrible dystopian outcome. We don't want that second thing. We want that first thing. And how hard you sitting there help us fight really could spell the difference. If even one person somewhere within the sound of my voice could get a Republican governor, like, I don't know, Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott of Texas or Chris Sununu of New Hampshire or Brian Kemp of Georgia, if any one of us could get one Republican governor to stand up, and all those states I just mentioned are being absolutely wrecked by student loan debt, just one Republican governor were to stand up and say, Mr. President, enough. I will not allow my great state of Ohio, Mike DeWine, to be conquered and enslaved by this federal debt. Mr. President, cancel the loans. If we were to get even one Republican governor to do that, that would be basically game over. We win. Like, that's how close we are. So there's a lot riding on this group, guys. I know it doesn't look like it, but we on this group are the pioneers, and you cannot unhear that. We are the tip of the spear. In many ways, we are the spear, guys. We're the eye of the storm. In many ways, we are the freaking storm. So what you do really, really matters. So my very last action request, in fact, my first and last and only action request for tonight is please follow us on Twitter. It helps. But more than that, go to our website, studentloanjustice.org. Do at least a month worth of our daily actions. You need a Twitter account to do it, by the way. Most of our daily actions take like minutes, not even minutes, like seconds to do. It's usually like retweet this, and this, like 4 retweets that you can do in 30 seconds. It's easy, it's simple. And we've got over 1 million people on our group now between our petition, our other platforms. When everybody does these daily actions every day, we will absolutely move mountains. We will have this problem solved in under a month and a half if everybody on our group did these daily actions. They're quick. They require at most a phone call, but usually it's just Twitter stuff. So please do that and follow us on Twitter. You know, we've got a massive muscle to flex. You have no idea, but that only matters when you help. These are your loans, and this is your problem. And you can't sit there and eat popcorn and wait and watch and worry and think that somebody's going to pull your weight for you. Never works like that. You got to put your own time in on this block. And that is the most important thing I will ever say. This is not a hard problem to solve, but it requires effort. You know, Ralph Nader said, democracy, 90% of democracy is just showing up. And so, yeah, you got to put in a little bit of time and effort. We're not going to solve this for you. This is your problem. These are your loans. So, okay, guys, I hope you all are stoked. I can't keep doing the comments. I know we've got a bunch, and I'm sorry for those that I wasn't able to respond to, but I will be back on Sunday night. And who knows, we might even see some interesting news this weekend. Things are happening fast. And by and large, that's a good thing. But like I said, guys, this could have a good ending. This could have a bad ending. And the bad guys are pushing for the bad ending. And we've got to meet that moment and push and push and push. So don't forget that. But I hope you're all thrilled. I hope you're all encouraged. Hope you're all going to follow us on Twitter and do at least a month, if not 2 or 3 months worth of our daily actions. Okay, guys, let's make this happen. One for all for one. I'll see you on Sunday. Have a great weekend. Good luck. Godspeed. God bless everybody.